gars d'ici, être le directeur de général des Canadiens est une occasion d'une vie. Pour un gars d'ici, être le directeur de général des Canadiens est une occasion d'une vie.
Enjoy the moment, you're in the NHL here.
Working for the Montreal Canadiens is a dream. La plus grande franchise dans la histoire du hockey.
If it was my last day on this planet, and you told me what would you like to do, I want to be in that building on a Saturday night.
Good evening, gang, and welcome to another episode of HABS Therapy Day. My name, of course, is Devin, and this is Recliner Sports, and we are here to talk about your playoff-bound Montreal Canadiens. What a week it's been, guys. What a 2 week it's been. We didn't do a show last week because the Canadiens played on Wednesday evening last week, so we didn't have a show last Wednesday, but it's been an amazing 2 weeks for the Montreal Canadiens. Very eventful, and there's lots to talk about. So welcome. Get comfortable. Get yourself a beer or something you like to drink, and let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens. And as always, guys, if you're not yet subscribed, you can do so by hitting the button down below. You can also hit the thumbs up for the likes, and you can also hit the notification bell. We're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. We're going to talk about hockey. If you have any questions, any comments, feel free to post them in the comment section. I see there's a few of you here already. I see Luciano. I see Billy D. I see RDP. Welcome, guys. It's great to see you, as always, the regulars. Hopefully we'll get some more guys in here. If you have any friends that you think would enjoy this, then certainly give them a buzz, let them know what's going on, and tell them to come on and check it out. So welcome to another episode, guys. This is your weekly interactive and bilingual hockey show focused on the NHL and more specifically your Montreal Canadiens. Our show is designed to give you objective, informed, and reasoned takes about the NHL and the Montreal Canadiens. You won't find clickbait here. You won't find hot takes here. If you're looking for delusional cheerleading, stuff like that, the go Habs go, my team's awesome, your team sucks kind of stuff, you're probably in the wrong place. We try and get a little bit deeper than that here. We're not just here to blow our own horns. We're here to talk about our team, and we're here to speak intelligently about it. C'est aussi une émission bilingue. Bienvenue à votre émission favorite de hockey hebdomadaire, interactive et bilingue, axée sur les Canadiens de Montréal. Notre émission est conçue pour vous donner des points de vue objectifs, informés et raisonnés. À propos de la LNH et nos glorieux, vous ne trouverez pas des pièges de clics ou des hot takes ici. Et si vous recherchez la claque ou des rumeurs sensationnelles, vous n'êtes pas au bon endroit. C'est un endroit où vous pouvez avoir des conversations intelligentes sur le tricolore sans avoir à vous soucier des conneries typiques de l'Internet. There's going to be none of that normal stuff you get on the Internet here, guys. We're trying to avoid that. There's not going to be any trolling or any of that BS. Alors, si vous êtes prêts, on va commencer l'émission. This is a place where you have intelligent conversations about the Canadiens, and we're going to try and avoid all the typical BS that you get online, guys. That's why we're over here on YouTube, and we've moved away from some of the other platforms, guys. So if you're ready, let's get the show on the road here. Tonight, we're going to talk about the fact that the Montreal Canadiens are in a playoff spot, right? The rebuild is chugging forward. And the Canadiens are in a playoff spot as of right now. They will be as of the end of tonight. They will be in a playoff position. It's something that many of us have looked forward to for a long time. But again, it's another indication that the Canadiens are on the right track and they're rebuilding. We'll do a review of the week, or the last 2 weeks actually. We'll look at a little bit about Patrik Laine, a subject that has been very popular in the news over the last couple weeks, and we'll do a little chat about the rebuild, and specifically we're going to talk about the issue of communication when it comes to the rebuild, and then finally we're going to talk about the prospects. In the prognosis section of the show, we'll talk about the prospects specifically we will talk about the prospects who may or may not be coming out in the next few weeks and joining the Montreal Canadiens. There's been some news with respect to a few of the prospects and their seasons ending, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So if that's interesting to you guys, stick around. Like I said, grab your favorite beer, your favorite pop, your favorite whatever, and get comfortable, and let's do it, guys. And like I said, anytime during the show, if you have a question or a comment, you can feel free to fire away. Happy to slow things down and stop and answer your questions as we move along. As I said, this is an interactive show. It's a show for you guys as much as it is for me. And so I'm just as interested in having a conversation and discussion with you guys more than I am about just sort of talking and having you guys listen. So again, feel free to fire away with your questions at any time. Si vous avez des questions, des commentaires, vous pouvez les donner. On va arrêter l'émission pour répondre à vos questions. J'aimerais bien avoir une discussion avec vous plutôt que parler moi seulement à vous. C'est pas une émission comme ça, c'est une émission interactive. Alors, je vous invite à participer et moi, j'aimerais bien vous parler et avoir une conversation au lieu de juste donner mes commentaires et parler à vous, or je vais parler avec vous. So that's it, guys. I would rather talk with you than to you. So if you have any questions, feel free to fire away. So also watching the Laval Rocket game over here. If anything comes up, guys, I will keep you in the loop as to what's going on. We're keeping an eye on that as well. So let's get to the first part of the show, guys. We're going to do our weekly review, guys. We call this the weekly checkup. And the weekly checkup this week is actually 2 weeks because we didn't do a show last week. We will be reviewing 2 weeks worth of results for the Canadiens. Last week the Canadiens played on Wednesday night, therefore we didn't have a show, and so now we're going to look at 2 weeks worth of games and talk about what it's all meant. So instead of going through each game individually and going through the scoreboard, which is what we've typically done in the past, guys, I've prepared a graphic here that I think you might find interesting. So this shows us the games that they've played in the last 2 weeks. They've played 6 games since we were last on the air with HABS Therapy Day. And we'll look at them. And then we will, of course, look at the wildcard standings and look at where the Canadiens fit in the grand scheme of things in the Eastern Conference right now. So, of course, guys, you'll go back 2 weeks ago. The Canadiens played against the Edmonton Oilers. Unfortunately, they lost 3-2 in overtime in that game. Very late in the overtime, the Oilers scored the game winner. It was a fun game to watch, guys. I thought the Canadiens played really, really well. I thought they got jobbed a little bit in the overtime by the referees. But it is what it is, and they unfortunately came out of that with a loss. They followed that up with a 1-0 loss against the Calgary Flames. Again, they played quite well, but didn't manage to get the victory. That, of course, was the game you'll all remember. Dustin Wolf was the star of the game, and the Canadiens certainly deserved a better fate that night, but there was no getting the puck past Dustin Wolf that night. And they unfortunately fell. It was a Saturday night game as well. But again, not a bad game. I think they played, all things considered, they played quite well. They followed that up with a 4-2 victory over the Vancouver Canucks. A well-played game. They were on the road. This was the second to last game of their road trip. They were able to beat the undermanned Canucks. Quinn Hughes was out of the lineup. However, the Canadiens did put on a good performance and were able to beat the Canucks in that game. The final game of the road trip was in Seattle, and this was the game where they probably were the most disappointing of all these 6 games. This was probably the worst of the 6 games. It was a 5-2 or a 5-4 overtime loss. They had a lead. They lost the lead. They gave up the lead late, and they fell to, frankly, a team that they should have had little trouble beating. They did manage to get a point out of it, however. So they did manage to do that. They followed that up a few days later. They returned home to meet up with the Florida Panthers last Was it Saturday they played the Panthers? No. Anyways, whenever it was, guys, I think it was Saturday. Maybe it was Saturday. Florida Panthers, 3-1 victory over the Panthers. Incredible win. They played very, very well. One of their best games of the year, in my opinion. They held down the defending Stanley Cup champions. They were the better team, and there was no doubt about it. They played a really, really mature hockey game in a very, very tough environment. It was a meaningful game, as we talk about, and it was against a very good team. Of course, they were missing Matthew Tkachuk, and of course, Brad Marchand has not yet made it into the lineup for the Panthers. But nonetheless, the Canadiens were the better team that night. This was not a situation where they won despite themselves. They definitely were the better team, and they played an excellent game, which brings us to last night's game at the Bell Center against the Ottawa Senators, a team there battling for a wild card spot, a rival. Ottawa being just down the 417 highway from Montreal, that is a rival. It's a team that there's a lot of emotion and animosity between the two teams of late. And so it was going to be a very, very big game and a very, very fun game and a very, very important game. Playoff-type atmosphere, a lot of pressure, and it was really going to be interesting to see how the Canadiens responded to that. A lot of these players have not played in a game like that before at the professional level, before a crowd like that, with a game that meant as much as all of that. And, to me, more than the score, obviously they won 6-3, as you can see on the graphic. The fact that they showed up and that they put a very, very mature performance on the ice against the Ottawa Senators last night demonstrated to me that a lot of the lessons they've been learning all year long have actually come to fruition. They're oh my goodness, a lot of rough stuff here in the Laval Rocket game against the Toronto Marlies. A lot of the lessons they learn, we've heard Marty St. Louis talk about teaching these guys how to win. And I think a lot of those lessons came to the forefront last night, and we saw them put them into practice, and they beat a good team, and they certainly look like they belong, and they had a really, really good game. I was impressed. I think you were impressed. The crowd was amazing. I think the players are starting to get a feel for what it's like to play big hockey games in Montreal. They're starting to get a feel for what playoff hockey looks like in Montreal, and I think they're getting excited about it. The fans were loud. The fans were into it last night, and it was a real playoff atmosphere in the Bell Center. The Canadiens, of course, there's no better place than Montreal when the Canadiens are in the playoffs. It's a great city to be in, and I think the players, especially the ones who haven't been around for a very long time, are starting to see all of that. So those are the 6 games that were played. Mark says the Seattle loss was tough to watch. It was, Mark. That was a very tough game to watch, absolutely. Both of the games against Seattle this year have been tough to watch. Anonymous says, what's my opinion on the Demidov situation? We're going to talk about that at the end of the show, Anonymous. We have a section on prospects, and we're going to specifically talk about Demidov and sort of the evolving situation currently going on in St. Petersburg and how that is playing out. What it means, what it could mean, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So stick around, and we'll definitely get to it. We'd love for you to be here. Love for you to talk about it. So we'll get to that as well. So those six games, guys, bring us to the wild card standings, which you see in the graphic next to you here. We see the Montreal Canadiens, of course, in that second wild card spot. They are just stand by here, guys. They are currently alone in that second wildcard spot. They are 1 point ahead of the New York Rangers, and they have 2 games in hand on the Rangers. They are 3 points ahead of the New York Islanders, who have played the same number of games. They are also 3 points ahead of Columbus and Detroit. Columbus has also played the same number of games, and they have 1 game in hand on Detroit. The Canadiens, as you can see, so on the bottom of the graphic there, you'll see I've put a heading there called 19 March 2024, and that is where the Canadiens were a year ago today. So a year ago today, the Canadiens had played 68 games, so 1 more game than they've currently played. They had 25 wins, which is 8 fewer. Sorry, that's a lie. They had 25 wins, which is 8 fewer than they have right now. They had 31 losses, which is 4 more than they have right now. The overtime losses, they had 12, which is 5 more. So remember, they had a lot of overtime losses and one-game losses last year. They currently have 11 more points than they did last year at this same time. So they had 62 points last year. They have 73 this year, and they've played 1 fewer game. And their goal differential this year is only minus 16 at this stage of the season, when last year it was minus 51. Right? So huge differences, huge improvements for those of you who, are being told by other fan bases that the Canadiens are not getting better, they're not improving, that the rebuild's not working or anything like that. There's your proof, guys. Again, an 11-point improvement from last year, and an over 30-point, a 35-goal difference, right? Over last year, they're just above 30. They're just above 3 goals per game for, and they're just over 3 goals per game allowed. And of course, they continue on a night in and night out basis to play meaningful games, right? This was the hope of the management this year, was that the Canadiens would be able to play meaningful games at or near the end of the season. They are doing that. There's 15 games left in the season. They're in a playoff spot. Every game matters. Every game counts. Every game is just like a playoff game. Whether they make it to the playoffs or not, they are getting the experience of playing that kind of game, which certainly bodes well for this team. That I think the rebuild is ahead of schedule. I don't think anybody thought they would be in a playoff position at this point of the rebuild, but the fact that they are is certainly a step in the right direction, and something that we can point to as a positive as far as where this team will move to as things go forward in the years to come. So, again, with a team that's still quite young and a team that is still rebuilding, they are ahead of schedule, and they're actually in a playoff position long before I think anybody really legitimately or reasonably expected that they would be. Demidov on pace for 61 points with 2 games left. Demidov is expected to be a healthy scratch for the remainder of the year, including the playoffs. Yes, that is what we will get to, RDP. We're going to talk in greater depth about that in the prospect section of the show later on. Mark asks, what do you think are the key reasons on why they've been much better this year? Well, again, it's maturity. These guys have more experience now, right? They've got another year under their belt. They've got another year of coaching behind them. Marty St. Louis has had an opportunity to work with these guys a little bit longer. Nick Suzuki is just a little bit better than he was last year. Cole Caulfield is better than he was last year. Slavkovsky looks like he's working his way into being better than he was last year. The bottom 6 have been better. Jake Evans has been fantastic for this team. Arguably one of the best defensive forwards in the entire NHL. Josh Anderson has accepted his role as a more of a bottom 6 player, as has Brendan Gallagher. They've adapted their games. They're playing much better that way. The defense is better. Lane Hutson, of course, has been a huge difference. His addition has made a big difference on this team, not just from a production point of view, but he's been a fantastic player all around. If you haven't heard, there was an interview or a show on The Athletic recently. Corey Pronman referred to Lane Hutson as the worst defensive defenseman in the NHL. So Corey Pronman continues to dig his hole as far as Lane Hutson is concerned. You'll recall that he's regularly ranked him well below where he probably should, and continues to double down on his misinformation and his miscomprehension concerning Lane Hutson, and as I said, recently referring to him as the worst defensive defenseman in the NHL. So again, I'm not sure why anybody would take Corey Pronman seriously anymore, but I thought maybe you guys would be interested in that. But those are the biggest differences I see, Mark, is like I said, there's been a couple of key additions to the team. The Alexandre Carrier trade was a huge thing. That wasn't just the fact that he brought some a little bit to the team, but he also allowed other players to be better by putting them in the right roles and the right positions in the lineup. So there's been a lot of different things, like I said, but I think the most important thing is just the passage of time, right? When you're in a rebuild, you need to be patient and you need to understand that your players, your job is to coach them. Your job is to develop them. And that's what the organization has done. Right. And so you're just looking at guys who get better year on. And, the whole idea behind a rebuild is you want them to continue to get better. And if they do, whether it's at the NHL level or whether it's at the American League level or whether it's in some minor league somewhere else, the NCAA, the OHL or wherever, as these guys continue to develop. So next year, we may see Demidov join the lineup. We may see Owen Beck join the lineup. We may see, Oliver Kapanen join the lineup. So all of these, things will continue to improve. So, the team continues to get better and time continues to pass on and they continue to improve and develop. Goals against so far this year is skewed by a number of blowouts earlier in the season. I agree, Billy D. I think the numbers are certainly quite a bit better of late. Certainly since Christmas, the numbers are significantly better. If you've been following, you've certainly seen that goal differential number shrink. But again, you're right. There were 3 or 4 games in the first couple months of the season where there was a 9-2 loss to the Kraken. I believe there was an 8-goal game against Pittsburgh. I think there were even a couple 7-goal. I think it was a 7-goal game against the Rangers. So you're right. Those numbers are thrown off a little bit by those previous games. And I think you'll just see, as long, if this team continues to play the way they are, I think you'll see them continue to get better. Who will win the cup this year, asks Quandel Dingle over on TikTok. If you're over on TikTok, guys, you can come over and join us on YouTube. But guys, we're doing a show over here. Feel free to come on over and join us. I don't know who's going to win the cup this year, Quandel. Couldn't tell you, man. Do the Canes look like they're going to make a run? I think the Canes are an okay team. I don't know that they're any real threat to win the Stanley Cup this year. I don't think they've improved significantly on last year's team. They certainly have a little bit more experience, I suppose, and a little bit of that under their belt from last year. But I don't see them ahead of teams like Florida or Tampa or Toronto at this stage. So we'll see. Obviously, the Rangers have fallen out of the mix a little bit, so that's one team they've maybe leapfrogged over a little bit, but we'll see how things go from here. What's going on, Intertap? It's great to see you. I agree with your assessment of Corey Pronman. Mark, I would say the main difference for the Habs is the PP and the PK, as the Habs 5 versus 5 goal differential is worse than last year, especially. That's actually not true, PLW. They're 5. I can't imagine that their 5-on-5 goal differential is worse than last year. I don't think that's correct. I'd have to do the research to confirm that. It is, Quandel. Recliner Sports 4. The address is right there. Yeah, I don't think that's right. I'll do my research to confirm that. But again, like I said, their goal differential overall on the season is improved by 35 goals. I don't think that has all occurred on the power play and the PK. I'll look at it, but I don't think you're right. Biggest improvement for Habs this year is their record versus Atlantic Division teams. Last year they were 5-13. Have to win in your division. Yeah, of course, but why are they winning those games? And to me, the reason they're doing better is because they've improved, they've developed, they've learned lessons, they've become more mature. They're better able to win games, right? They've learned those winning habits that Marty St. Louis has been teaching them, which has resulted in them winning more games in their division. It's resulted in them winning more games overall. And but yeah, I mean, winning in your own division is important. Those are big games, and those are the types of games that you need to win in order to get better. And I've always preached patience, as has Intertap. Impatience is the biggest enemy of a rebuild, and when you're in a rebuild, a lot of times, all you want to do is just sit back and relax and let it happen, right? It's not always about trying to make a move or trying to fix something that's not necessarily broken, right? That was the Canadiens' MO for a really long time. They had a management team that was very reactionary, that would react to 3 or 4 losses, and all of a sudden, a trade needed to be made, or a coach needed to be fired, or somebody needed to be sent down, and they were always in the process of trying to fix something. But now there's more of a long-term plan in place, and you just need to, you just need to let it happen. And that's for the most part the reason why this team has gotten better, is that they've just allowed this group to stay together. They've allowed them to play hockey. They've allowed them to practice. They've allowed them to learn, and they've given them the right coaches and the right staff to do that. And these players just continue to improve, and they again, development is not linear. There will be steps backwards and forwards, but we'll see. Do I think Leon can win the Selke or the Hart? I think he can win the Hart. I'm not sure about the Selke. Again, the Selke no longer goes to the best defensive forward in the NHL. If he wins the Selke, then I think that would be a big mistake, but we'll see. 2024, 5 versus 5, minus 12. 2023, 24, 5 versus 5, minus 4. I think that's wrong. I think you've got your numbers, PLW. I don't see how the Canadiens could have possibly been minus 51 at this point last year and only minus 4 on 5 versus 5. I think that's I don't know where you're getting your numbers, and I just think that they're wrong. I'll certainly look them up myself, but I don't believe that those numbers are accurate. I know you're just talking about the Habs, but watch the Red Wings never be a good team. I don't know why people are saying they will be good in 2027. Well, I mean, we've just talked about patience and rebuild, and the Red Wings are the prime example of a team that wasn't patient in their rebuild. Right? They came out of their rebuild way too early. Their management decided that they were in the playoffs or were close to the playoffs, and decided that they were no longer going to try and build from within, and they were no longer going to try and build with their young players and allow their young players to develop. And they started going out and signing older veteran free agents, and they abandoned whatever attempt to a rebuild that they had, and they've kind of sentenced themselves to a lengthy period of mediocrity. Like, they're a team that will be on the edges of the playoffs for the next number of years. But even if they do make it into the playoffs, it won't really, to what end? Like, they don't really have any chance of doing anything in the playoffs, and they don't really have any chance of improving or getting better. Like, they're stagnating, and that's because they didn't allow their young players to develop, and they abandoned their rebuild in favor of free agents and trades. And I think they messed up. They seem to be better at closing out games this year. Seattle game aside, sign of maturity. Yeah, that's one of their winning habits, right? Is learning how to put the nail in the coffin. We saw it last night, right? The Canadiens finally get a lead, and then Samuel Montembeault allows what was a pretty poor goal, the Hamonic goal, right, which tied it back up, and we would have seen this group, we would have seen them fold in October and November, and that adversity would have probably been more than they could handle, and they would have fallen apart, and they probably would have they would have lost that game, but they were able to overcome that adversity last night, because now they've learned those winning habits, they've experienced it, they know how to deal with it, they have the players, the Josh Andersons, the Brendan Gallaghers, the Nick Suzuki's, they have the players who can put them on their back and carry them out of that. And not get down and sort of shut down emotionally when things like that happen. Remember after the Pittsburgh game, I think it was, when they were they basically, I think they gave up, or even I think it was the Pittsburgh game, they gave up a ton of goals in the third period or whatever it was, I think 5 or 6 goals in the third period alone. And they talked about in the dressing room how they quit. Now, I don't think they quit, and I think what they meant to say is that they lost it. They lost their handle on the ability to play the game, and they just couldn't do it anymore. And I think that's something that they don't do anymore. That's not something that happens to them at this stage of the rebuild, and that they've learned that lesson. So next up, guys, we're going to go to current symptoms, and we're going to talk about a bit of a touchy subject. It's one that I've talked about on HABS After Dark a few times. And so current symptoms today is going to be about Patrik Laine. So Patrik Laine has been in the news lately. He's been a bit of a dividing force with Montreal Canadiens fans. You either love him or you hate him. I'm not sure why you would possibly hate him, but there are certain out there who do. And that is being led in large part by the francophone media that covers the Montreal Canadiens. For some reason, they don't like him. They are keen to peddle false information, rumors, speculation, innuendo about Patrik Laine in order to promote a narrative that he's lazy, that he doesn't work hard, that he is a bad teammate, that he's bad for the team, that he's a cancer in the organization, that he doesn't fit the mold of what this team is trying to build. And they're willing to deceive. They're willing to say whatever it takes in order to promote that narrative. I'm not sure why. I have my ideas, and I think one of the reasons why is a man named Gilbert Delorme. For those of you who don't know who Gilbert Delorme is, he's a former NHL hockey player. I'm going to just bring up his hockey DB here so I can get my facts right. Gilbert Delorme was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens in 1981 in the first round. He is a prototypical first-round flop. He is as big a flop as the Canadiens have ever had in the first round. They drafted him 18th overall. He only lasted with the Canadiens for 2 seasons before being traded. He then came back and played 27 games for the Canadiens in 1983-84. But as a first-round NHLer, he played 541 games in the NHL and had only 123 points. There's no other way to put it, but his NHL career was a dismal failure in every possible respect. He scored 12 goals in 1982-83 in 78 games. And beyond that, the most goals he had in a single season were 3. So he had 12 goals one season, and the most he had in a single season after that was 3. This is after scoring 111 and 106 points in consecutive seasons in the Quebec League prior to being drafted. So Gilbert Delorme is a dismal failure as a hockey player. Terry Ryan as well. I would argue that Gilbert Delorme is every bit the failure that Terry Ryan was. But I just want to give you some context about who we're talking about here. So Gilbert Delorme doesn't like Patrik Laine. He never did. His criticisms, if you want to go and research it, his criticisms of Patrik Laine started before the Montreal Canadiens even signed him. If you'll remember this summer, there were all kinds of rumors about Patrik Laine and whether he was coming to Montreal, and everyone was talking about it, and people were divided about whether they thought he should come or whether he shouldn't or whatever. Gilbert Delorme was the loudest voice, particularly in the francophone media, against Patrik Laine coming to Montreal. He was talking negatively about Laine before he ever even was signed to the Montreal Canadiens. And this was his reaction when the news came out that Laine had signed with the Canadiens. Ma première réaction, ça a été tabarnak, pas lui à Montréal. Moi, je trouve que Patrik Laine, c'est à l'opposé de ce qu'on veut bâtir à Montréal. C'est un gars qui est nonchalant. C'est un gars que s'il ne remplit pas le filet, moi, je pense qu'il pourrait devenir une distraction. My first reaction was, shit, not him in Montreal. I think Patrik Laine is the opposite of what we want to build in Montreal. He's a guy who's nonchalant. You could use the same word, lazy there. He's a guy who, if he doesn't fill the net, could become a distraction. Now, that's actually quite mild compared to some of the other things that Gilbert Delorme has said about Patrick Laine. But he, of course, was openly critical of Laine when Laine was benched. I don't know if you remember that about a month ago. He was benched, and Delorme went up and down in one side and complained and said that he was playing with his fingernails on the bench. And he went on an expletive-filled tirade on RDS about Laine and how he was lazy and that he shouldn't be on the team and he should be out of here. But again, this is a guy who started with a narrative and now is jumping on every opportunity. Anytime Patrick Laine does anything negative, he's the first guy to jump all over it. And he's the first guy to criticize. He's the first guy to call him out. RDS has also played a significant role in all of this. I don't know if you guys will remember this, but just prior to the Four Nations face-off, Patrick Laine was interviewed after practice with the Finnish team, and he spoke about the fact that he was looking forward to the Four Nations face-off and that he was looking forward to getting more ice time, and that playing in the Four Nations, he hoped that would help him with his confidence and that he'd get more ice time and be able to do whatever. He did then go on to talk about the fact that the reason he wasn't getting more ice time was his own fault, that he wasn't playing well, and that he had no one to blame but himself, and that he hoped that he would be able to, improve his game so that he would be able to get more ice time after the Four Nations face-off was over. However, RDS took that interview and they cut it in such a way where they stopped at the part where he spoke about how his ice time was his own fault. And so they just used the part of the interview where he spoke about the fact that he wasn't getting any ice time in Montreal and that it was frustrating and that it was difficult and so on and so forth. So RDS ran that video on their show 5 à 7. They also ran it all over social media, and they cut it at that point. And then they followed up with commentary about the fact that Patrick Laine was throwing Marty St. Louis under the bus and that he was being critical of his coach. And they also made a big deal out of the fact that he was doing it while he was off at the Four Nations face-off, essentially calling him a coward for going off and doing it, when he wasn't in Montreal and when he wouldn't have to face the music. Again, totally misinterpreted, totally misinformed the fans about everything. And if you didn't dig a little bit deeper and go and watch the entire interview, you wouldn't know any better. Yannick Bouchard, one of the hosts of 5 à 7, questioned Laine's manhood and his integrity. His quote was, "Ça nous donne l'impression de la grandeur de l'homme. Quand le coach est pas là, ça c'est tout. Ça, c'est out, bye. Tu n'as pas besoin de ça dans le vestiaire. Bye, bye, bye." And he's giving the thumbs out, get out of here kind of thing, right? So this loser on RDS named Yannick Bouchard, who hosts the show 5 à 7, takes a deceptively edited video, which essentially says the opposite of what the actual interview said, and then he uses that video, which he knows is deceptively edited, and he uses that video to basically question Patrick Laine's manhood and say that he's a coward for calling out his coach when the coach isn't around. He calls into question his integrity, and he basically says that the Canadiens should get rid of this guy and that he should be run out of town. That's who we're dealing with in the Francophone media right now in Montreal. And this is not some, fly-by-night podcaster like me. This is RDS, right? The official broadcaster of the Montreal Canadiens in Quebec, right? This is the broadcaster that has the official rights to the Montreal Canadiens. These are meant to be serious journalists, and this is what they're doing. Last week, Luc Gélina, another reporter for RDS, was spreading false information about Patrick Laine and the fact that he, according to Gélina, was faking being sick, right? That he wasn't really sick, and that that he was staying out of the lineup because he didn't want to play, or that he was upset with the coaches over his ice time. So he took to social media. He also gave an interview, by the way, which you can find on RDS, where he says, "Oui, même genre de grippe étrange que Dadonov il y a 2 ans. Ce n'est pas une rumeur, c'est une question que je me pose. Je suis très perplexé et je me demande si c'est vrai que des symptômes de grippe l'empêchent de patiner depuis 4 jours." So what Jelena is saying there, yes, the same kind of strange flu that Dadonov had 2 years ago. This isn't a rumor. It's a question I'm asking myself. I'm very perplexed, and I'm wondering if it's true that flu symptoms have prevented him from skating for 4 days. So here we have another serious journalist for RDS, the official broadcaster of the Montreal Canadiens, peddling rumors and innuendo and speculation, and calling into question Patrick Laine's integrity, right? He's faking being sick, right? The Canadiens are saying he's sick, but he's not really. And, if you watch the interview, he talks about the fact that Laine doesn't want to play, that he's upset over ice time. And again, all of the boys on RDS, on 5 à 7, have a good little laugh about it, and laugh about the fact that, Laine is a bad apple, that he's lazy, that he doesn't really care about the team, and he's this, that, and the other thing. And guess what? A lot of people are buying it. A lot of people are buying it. These are serious broadcasters, but there's a lot of, fly-by-night podcasters like me, and there's a lot of guys who go on YouTube, there's a lot of guys who go on other social media platforms, and they're buying this bullshit that Luc Jelena and Gilbert Delorme and Yannick Bouchard and other people like them are selling. And they're spreading it, right? And now you've got people out there who believe all of this stuff that's being promoted about Patrick Laine, right? Tony Marinaro, right? Again, perhaps not a serious broadcaster in the purest sense of the term, but certainly one that's well known. He has a podcast. He's on the radio on BPM Sports every morning. He has a platform. Patrick Laine est un joueur paresseux. Il a toujours été et le sera toujours, qu'il joue au Canada, aux États-Unis ou à Beyrouth. Il ne faut pas être surpris parce que nous voyons. Il a toujours été lui. C'est un joueur au talent fou qui se montre quand il en a envie. Et il arrive souvent qu'il n'en ait pas envie. C'est pourquoi ce deuxième choix de repêchage fait maintenant partie de sa 3e équipe dans la ligue. Ça s'est mal terminé avec les 2 premiers et leurs entraîneurs. Si je devais prédire aujourd'hui, Patrick Laine ne retournerait pas avec les Canadiens à la fin de son contrat. Right? So here's Tony Marinaro. Again, perhaps, not a serious broadcaster. I don't think anybody would call him that. But again, a guy who has a platform, who's well known, and he says Patrick Laine is a lazy player. He always has been and always will be, whether he plays in Canada, the United States, or in Beirut. We shouldn't be surprised by what we're seeing. It's always been him. He's a player with crazy talent who shows up when he feels like it, and it often happens that he doesn't feel like it. That's why the 2nd overall pick in the draft is now on his 3rd team in the league. It ended badly with the first 2 and their coaches. If I had to predict today, Patrick Laine would not be returning to the Canadiens at the end of his contract. So again, right, we're getting people who are reporting this, people are listening to this, people are spreading this. It's pure bullshit, right? Patrick Laine, is not lazy, right? Mental health is not laziness. Mental health is not a weakness, right? These are things that are well known. We know these things about Patrick Laine now, right? He's been open about them, right? So let's talk about the facts when it comes to Patrick Laine, right? Like let's get past the speculation and the rumors and the misinformation that are being spread by BPM Sports, by RDS, and by people like Tony Marinaro, right? The people who should be more responsible, but again are more concerned about pushing a narrative than they are about being truthful. So as we know, the Canadiens traded Jordan Harris to Columbus for Patrick Laine and a second-round draft pick this summer. Again, a no-brainer trade for the Canadiens. They had to give up a defenseman who, frankly, there wasn't enough room on the roster for to begin with. They did take on Laine's entire salary, $8.7 million, but they also managed to get a second-round draft pick out of it. So again, what could possibly upset you about that? Right, a total no-risk move by the Montreal Canadiens. They essentially gave up nothing, and incidentally, Jordan Harris hasn't really been able to even crack the lineup for the Columbus Blue Jackets this year. So they've essentially given up nothing. They got a second-round draft pick out of it, and they got Patrick Laine at $8.7 million a year. As I mentioned a minute ago, Patrick Laine was very open about his struggles with mental health. He talked about his depression. He talked about anxiety. He talked about the issues that he has, with his confidence, and that, his confidence is very fragile, and that oftentimes, he doesn't feel confident on the ice. He's talked about the fact that he, at times, considered not playing hockey anymore, right? It was too difficult for him. He struggled with that. That was hard for him. I think he mentioned in his interview with Spitting Chicklets that he hadn't put skates on for months and held a hockey stick before going to Montreal for training camp. Oh my God, they just ran Reinbacher. The Marlies are running the Laval Rocket right and left in this game. It's going to get pretty nasty. So this is sort of what we're talking about, right? This guy was very open about it. He spoke about his mental health issues. The Canadiens spoke about it. They spoke about, that they knew about it and that they, wanted to help him with all of this. They wanted to work on this with him. His Canadiens teammates have only spoken positively about him. Everybody seems to enjoy having him around. The coaching staff, Marty St. Louis talked multiple times about how happy it makes him feel to see Patrick Laine enjoying coming to the rink again. We saw the opening night when he was introduced, even though he wasn't able to play because of the injury he suffered in the preseason game. He spoke about that and how he, the emotions that he felt and all of that stuff. So sort of this is the environment that we're talking about. So put the commentary that we just talked about from Gilbert Delorme and from Luc Gélina and from Yannick Bouchard and from others, Tony Marinaro, put that in this context, right? It's not like these guys don't know about, in Winnipeg and Columbus, they could at least have the excuse that Patrick Laine hadn't opened up about his mental health and that he was struggling with it. And some of the stuff that they said about him being lazy was perhaps the perception that you might have without knowing about it. Right? Not knowing that he was, struggling with his life and all of this stuff. But Tony Marinaro knows this, right? Gilbert Delorme knows this. Like Gilbert Delorme knows that Patrick Laine sometimes has a hard time getting up in the morning, right? He knows that sometimes he might have a hard time going to the rink. And sometimes he might be depressed, and sometimes he might struggle with his confidence. And so when Patrick Laine plays a bad game, Gilbert Delorme takes that opportunity to call him a bum. Like Gilbert Delorme takes that opportunity to, I want to get the quote here. Patrick Laine says, or Gilbert Delorme, Patrick Laine has a bad game. And sur le deuxième but, c'est pathétique. Le joueur des Ducks passe à côté de lui et il a juste resté avec, à la suivre à patiner. Il arrête de patiner complètement. Straight legs. À 5 contre 5, c'est fuck all. C'est zéro, puis hier, c'était pathétique. Il se fait bencher en troisième. Il y a une séquence où il se joue après les ongles sur le banc. C'est quoi le problème? Le problème en ce moment, Pat, c'est quoi ton asti de problème? Right? Absolument pas, et je vais te dire pourquoi. Il s'est pogné le cul toute la game et ça enverrait une drôle de message au reste de l'équipe. Ça voudrait dire que tu peux te poigner le cul et rien faire toute la game, puis je vais t'envoyer sur la glace pour te donner un petit bonbon et je vais t'envoyer sur le power play. Il a bien fait de le bencher. So this is Gilbert Delorme, a former NHL hockey player, a former NHL player who failed dismally in the NHL. And this is the commentary that he offers on a legitimate broadcaster when Patrick Laine has a bad game. This is how he speaks about him. When he knows that Laine struggles with mental health, when he knows that Laine struggles with his confidence, when he knows that Laine, sometimes has a hard time going to the rink. Now, I get that perhaps as a broadcaster, as a journalist, he has no obligation to Patrick Laine whatsoever. But as a human being, I think you have a little bit of an obligation to be better than that. I think you have an obligation to be better than that. And the reality is that there's people out there that listen to Gilbert Delorme and they repeat what he says. There's somebody out there who I highly respect. I won't say his name because it's not fair. There's somebody out there who I highly respect who repeated that quote word for word to me. Right? Repeated that quote about him sitting on the bench playing with his nails, and all this, and repeated it word for word as support for the fact that Patrick Laine should be kicked off the team. Patrick Laine should be gone. It's bullshit. It's bad people. It's bad human beings. If you know somebody struggles that way and you say stuff like that, you're a bad human being. It's as easy as that. Right? If you go public on a national broadcast with a rumor that Patrick Laine is faking being sick and that he's just tired and doesn't want to play because he's pissed off about his ice time and this, that, and the other thing, without knowing what it really means or what it really is, like you don't have evidence of it, you're a bad person. These are rumors. These are rumors, and you're spreading them like they're truth. If they were true, everybody would be reporting it, right? If Patrick Laine was running around the hotel, and whatever, and not sick and whatever, everybody would be reporting it. Not just Luc Gélina. Who does Luc Gélina think he is? So again, this is what's being reported about Patrick Laine. And let's look at some of the the facts about Patrick Laine. Right? These are not rumors. These are not innuendo. Patrick Laine, 2024. He's played 37 games this year. He's averaging just under 14 and a half minutes per game. He's scored 16 goals. He has 11 assists, 27 points. He's got 10 penalty minutes, and he's a minus 10. That minus is coming down, by the way, of late, but obviously that's not ideal, the minus 10. But again, he's on a team that has a goal differential of minus 16. Those are the facts about Patrick Laine, right? This is what the Canadiens are getting, right? So they got him for nothing, right? They gave up Jordan Harris, and they got him and a second-round draft pick in return. At the beginning of the year, everyone was asked, what do you think Patrick Laine will be able to do this year? What do you think Patrick Laine will be able to do this year? Well, we didn't know. Nobody really knew, right? But if I told you that he was going to score on a 35-goal pace and a 60-point pace, I think you'd probably be pretty happy with that, right? He hadn't played most of last year. He came into training camp and, was injured severely. Chose not to have surgery, right? Could have had surgery and had the whole year off, right? If he was that lazy and didn't like playing hockey and didn't want to play hockey, he had the perfect excuse, right? The perfect reason not to play hockey. Chose not to have surgery, wanted to play, came back and played, and has played 37 games now, and he has 16 goals, right? He's on a 35-goal pace. What more do you want from this guy? Yeah, he's not the best defensive hockey player in the world, but is that news to you? Right? Is that news to you? Like, who didn't know that Patrick Laine wasn't, the greatest defensive hockey player in the world? It's not his strength. He works on it. Last night we saw him. He looked very good, right? He looked very good two ways. When Patrick Laine is in the lineup, the Canadiens' record is 21 wins, 14 losses, and 2 overtime losses. The Montreal Canadiens are better with Patrick Laine in the lineup than they are without him. Period. It's indisputable. There's no argument about it. It can't be disputed. There's no argument about it. But yet you get people like Gilbert Delorme and Tony Marinaro and Yannick Bouchard and Luc Gélina who are doing everything in their power to try and turn the Montreal Canadiens fan base against this guy. I don't understand why. And it's working. Because like I said, there are people out there who believe this stuff, right? There are people out there who believe when Luc Gélina says Patrick Laine is faking the sickness and he's like Evgeny Dadonov who faked being sick and didn't want to play and whatever. There are people out there who believe it, and there are people out there who spread it, right? There are fly-by-night podcasters like me who push this information and believe what Luc Gélina is actually fact, and it's not just rumor and speculation from a guy who doesn't know any better than you and I. So, again, I know that probably came off as a little bit more of a rant than I wanted it to. But again, stop it, right? If you're inclined to say that Patrick Laine is lazy, think about it for a second. Think about what he's going through. Think about, his situation. Think about who he is and all of that. Think about it, right? Mental health is not lazy. Mental health is not weak. Mental health is not soft. It just isn't. And when you want to, criticize him for not being a great defensive player, well, not everybody's going to be a great defensive player. Now, I get that there's non-negotiables and there's things that he has to do in order to be a part of this team. That's a fact, and I think he understands that. But if you're looking for him to play a Nick Suzuki style game, you're barking up the wrong tree, and your expectations are off. And that's your fault. That's not Patrick Laine's fault. Like, if you thought that Patrick Laine was going to be a Selke Award candidate, then that's your fault for having those expectations. Patrick Laine is an extraordinary offensive hockey player who is going to make any power play in the NHL spectacular, and he's going to contribute offensively to your team. Period. And you hope that he can be defensively responsible enough to be able to put on the ice on a regular basis. And realistically, right now, you're going to see him get more ice time in games when the Canadiens need offense, and you're going to see him get less ice time in games when they need defense, right? So if they're up 3-2 against the Ottawa Senators, with 10 minutes left in the game, you're not going to see him get much ice time, right? But if they're down 3-2 to the Ottawa Senators with 10 minutes in the game, you might see him get a little bit more ice time. He's going to get his power play time. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So again, if you're inclined to be upset or talk shit or criticize Patrick Laine because you think he's lazy or he's not good defensively, maybe think about it for a minute. Do your research. Think about the sources of the information that you're getting and you're getting ready to spread, and maybe see if you really still want to spread that information. That's all I have to say about Patrick Laine. So I will get back to your questions here. Dadonov was sit out for post-concussion syndrome, and the HABS said it was flu back then. Again, I don't know what it was, PLW. I suspect that, again, is RDS taking shots at players that they, about things that they don't really know. They don't really care about it. They didn't like the player, and they don't really care to be truthful as long as their narrative, it suits their narrative. We should not give them any attention, for they know not what they are saying. Sensationalism at its best. I agree, Entertap. I agree, but there are people out there that you and I know who take Gilbert Delorme at face value. There are people out there that we know who have a platform who take RDS and BPM Sports at face value. MSL should have pulled a Torts next time. RDS asked him a question post-game. Yeah, I don't know that would have served him anything, but I don't know. Yes, Harris, PLW is often a healthy scratch. Rodney says, "Go Habs, go Rockets! Keep up the great channel." Thank you, Rodney. I appreciate the kind words. Spectre Dad, what's going on, man? I appreciate you being here. Of course, Spectre Dad was a regular on TikTok when we do lives over there, and hopefully he'll become a regular here on our YouTube channel. So, yeah, I mean, this is an issue that I've stood up for all along, Spectre Dad. I'll continue to. I've had loud words with people about it, and there's people who insist that Laine is weak, or he's soft, or he's lazy, or he's this, or he's a cancer. And they, again, everybody wants to talk a big game about mental health and mental health being conscious and cognizant of mental health. But then they say stuff like that. And, sometimes you got to put your money where your mouth is, and you got to walk the walk. It's not just about talk. Laine could have missed the whole year with surgery, but instead he chose to work through the injury and give us everything he has. Montreal media sucks, unfortunately. We should be very thankful for him. Yeah, again, I think he was looking forward to playing hockey. And honestly, dealing with this bullshit is the kind of thing that probably exacerbates his struggles, right? Right? Like if you're somebody who has a hard time, with anxiety and depression and that stuff, again, I don't know how much he reads the paper. Hopefully he's smart enough not to follow all that stuff. But when you pick up the paper or listen to the radio in the car on the way into work, and you hear people talking about how you're lazy and you're this and you're that, and that you were faking being sick and, all this kind of stuff, and calling into question your integrity, I mean, you talk about the reason why a lot of people don't want to come and play in Montreal. That's reason number one right there, right? Gilbert Delorme, RDS, Yannick Bouchard, Luc Gélina, George Larac. Those are the reasons. Like, we talk about Montreal not being, you talk about the tax situation and all that kind of stuff. Reason number one, players don't want to come to Montreal is because of those people. Period. Point final. You have to take these analysts for who they are. Former grinders will prefer grinders. Former coaches will throw under the bus some kind of players they don't like. Yeah, I agree with that to an extent. But again, you're a broadcaster on a respected and legitimate media outlet. You can't be that person. You got to be better than that. Work has been brutal. Trying to tune in more. I miss your takes. You know me. I got a love for Laine and feel the pain is very. Yeah, I do, Spectre Dad, and I appreciate you making the opportunity to be here. And I'm really glad to see you. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming. Bonjour Nicolas. Je ne savais pas que tu avais une émission autre qu'après le match, after the game. Super content de te trouver par hasard. Oh, merci Nicolas. On fait cette émission à chaque mercredi soir à 8h temps de l'Est, sauf si le Canadien joue à 7 soir. Alors, on n'avait pas une émission la semaine passée, mais on a une émission ce soir. Alors, c'est une émission qu'on va faire à chaque semaine. Si vous voulez nous joindre, vous êtes plus que bienvenus. Alors, c'est excellent de te voir. Merci beaucoup. It's great to see you, Nicolas. Again, guys, I want to talk, again, we're going to do a little bit we do called the treatment, which is the section that we do about the rebuild. We talk briefly about a different aspect of the rebuild on each show. This week, I am going to talk on the topic of communication and the importance of communication when it comes to a rebuild. And so communication, I think, is important in a rebuild on a number of different levels. Whether it's, the communication between the management and the players, the coaches and the players and each other, the organization and the media. And we just talked about, right, how the media is important. And communication with the fans, right? Communication with the fans is especially important in a rebuild because you need to be able to make the fans understand what it is you're trying to do, so that they, again, a rebuild can be a painful thing for fans, right? It's hard to get your fans to accept losing, but sometimes you have to, you're going to lose, right? And you need to prepare your fans for that, and you need to let them know that there's good things coming. So let's start first off with communication with the players. And so I've got a quote here from Kent Hughes, which I thought was pretty apropos. It is sometimes said that a manager or a coach does not want to develop a relationship with a player because it becomes more complicated when you have a difficult decision to make. I chose to have a relationship with the players, to get to know them, to work hard with them. I do not want to spend my days avoiding them. When we have difficult decisions to make, we will make them and we will communicate frankly. You can't impose your will without giving them something in return. We're trying to establish a culture and an environment where everyone feels they have value. Players aren't always going to hear what they want to hear, but communication is more important than leaving people in doubt and uncertainty. I don't know if anybody else finds that as refreshing as I do, but having a general manager that speaks in those terms after what the Canadiens have had for management for the last 15 years, that is like music to my ears, right? We now have management that wants to communicate with the players and communicate clearly with them. Like, how long have we had general managers that, communicate with the players by code, right? By sending coded messages through the media, by benching them. This goes for the coaching staff too, right? By benching them, by Tortorella style, right? Oh, you're not playing in the third period. Well, you don't tell me why. Like, how does that help me, right? Kent Hughes believes that you need to communicate with the players, right? You don't want them being left in doubt or uncertainty. You want them to know what you're thinking. You want them to know what's expected of them, and you want them to know whether whether they're living up to your expectations, right? You're not communicating. It's progressive, right? This is the new style. This is how you coach players. This is, the Patrick Laine is a great example, right? You can't coach a guy like Patrick Laine the way they coached him, the way they coached 25, 30 years ago. You can't do that. And you can say, well, tough shit, if he can't handle it, then he should go somewhere else. Yeah, okay, that's great. But you're losing a great talent when you do that, right? You're losing a great talent when you do that. When you say things like, well, the players should be tougher, they should be able to handle it, they should have thicker skin, and well, that's fine. Okay, that's great. But you're not doing your organization. You're not doing you're doing your organization. You're doing a disservice, right? Because you're basically eliminating all of the players who can't perform under those conditions, right? You're eliminating all of the players who either can't play at all under those conditions or won't play as well under those conditions, right? Won't play, the ones who aren't able to decipher the coded messages that you're trying to send them by benching them or by, diminishing their ice time or by, calling them names or calling them whatever in the media. Like, this is a better way. And in a rebuild, right? We talked in a previous show about building a place where people want to come, building a culture, building an identity, right? You can't have an identity and you can't have a culture or an atmosphere where people want to be when you have an adversarial relationship between the management, the coaching staff, and the players, right? You can't have an environment, you can't have a destination that players want to come to when you have a coaching staff or a management that treats their players that way. Do you think people want to go? Do you think the players want to go and play for John Tortorella? Or do you think they want to go and play for Marty St. Louis? Right? There may be players out there that don't mind the John Tortorella style, and they're guys who are used to being yelled at by their coaches, and they're used to all that stuff. But I can tell you that there are a lot of players that would much rather play under a Marty St. Louis who is going to coach you in a way that is designed to get the most out of you, as opposed to coaching the way I want to coach, and you're going to adapt to the way I coach, and you're going to like it or you're going to lump it. This is how we coach here. This is how we do things here. And if you don't like that, then you can go somewhere else. That's the old style. But, when you're rebuilding, I think it's in your best interest. Well, it's any team. It's not even just rebuilding. It's in your best interest to put players in situations where they have the best opportunity to succeed, right? Constant communication. Telling the players what their role is. This is what we think your role is on this team. This is what we expect from you. And meeting with the players on a regular basis. This is what we think you're doing well. This is what I think you're not doing well. This is what you need to work on. We want you to work more on this. We want your role to be a little. Arbor Jacki getting sent down last year, right? Clearly he went down, and there were things that they wanted him to work on. Constant communication. They let him know what they wanted from him, and they gave him constant reports and assessment and evaluation on whether he was living up to that or not, right? And again, it's not a one-way communication, it's a two-way communication, right? Communication isn't talking to people. Communication is having a conversation with them. So getting the feedback from the players, right? This is your role. What do you think about that? Can you play that role? What's your feedback on? What can you do to be better in that role? Self-assess yourself, right? All of this stuff, always communicating, right? And a good coaching staff will be having meetings with their players on the regular basis, right? So when we talk about, the Canadiens and they're doing this and they're doing that, or they're not doing this and they're not playing, we don't even have a clue, right? They're all talking about this stuff behind the scenes, right? You think they weren't talking to Uri Slafkovsky about being more physical and all this stuff? Like, this isn't just stuff that they're figuring out, right, Marty? I do not want. It's more important than leaving people in doubt and uncertainty, right? These players are not surprised when things go badly, right? Or when they get benched, or when whatever goes on, because they've been told, right? We if you don't do this, then we might have to get somebody else to do it. So that's communicating with the players, and I think that is obviously very important on any team, whether you're in a rebuild or not. Communication with the media. One of the hallmarks of the Montreal Canadiens in the past was how secretive they were, right? How difficult it was to break into or to get news or information from the team, right? They were very, very close-fisted with the media. You didn't get to, the access to the players was limited. The access to management was very limited. That's changed, right? That's changed a lot. There's way more transparency with the organization right now. I mean, the biggest example of that is the hiring of Chantal Machabé, the VP of Hockey Communications, right? A former member of the media, understands how things work on both sides. She knows what it's like to be a reporter, and now she's in a role where she, the organization has recognized the importance of bridging that gap with the media and fostering better relationships with the media, and that's Chantal Machabé, right? And why it's so important is because, like I said earlier, you need to communicate your plan when you're rebuilding. Rebuilds suck. Most teams won't even use the word, right? They're afraid to use the word because it's a bad word for fans. What it tells fans is our team is going to be shitty, right? Our team is not going to be very good, and we're going to lose for 2, 3, 4 years, right? And so it's vital for an organization like the Montreal Canadiens to communicate through the media and to the fans what the plan is, right? Yeah, we're going to lose for a little while, but this is what we're doing. This is the plan, right? We're gonna focus on the draft. We're gonna focus on young players. We're bringing in a coach who's a teacher. We're changing our scouting staff because we think the draft is really important, and we're building a stable of young players and assets. And we got a new coach in Laval, and he's really good with young players. And we're doing this and we're doing that, and the videos about the draft day, and showing the behind the scenes interviews with Jacob Fowler and with Michael Hage and with Ivan Demidov and with David Reinbacher, and all this stuff, right? They're being more transparent. They're allowing the fans into the TV show, right? the TV show that they did on Crave, right? Allowing the fans to see what their plan is, right? You rarely go longer than a week with Kent Hughes not giving an interview. Marty St. Louis is interviewed after every game, right? That's not abnormal. That's always been done. But now it's on YouTube, right? You can watch it on TV. You can watch the player interviews. You can watch it on your computer if you're a fan, right? You don't have to, you don't have to go and find it or wait for the 6 o'clock sports desk or whatever. You can go and find it yourself, right? You can hear what Jake Evans had to say about the game. You can hear what Lane Hudson is saying. These things are available to the fans because they understand how important it is to be transparent and to communicate the plan to the fans, right? Chicago, opposite. They've done nothing to communicate properly what their plan is to the fans. Even to the players, right? We hear Connor Bedard talking about how he can't stand losing and how it sucks to lose, and he doesn't know how much longer he can take all this losing. Well, how has the team not communicated to him that they're rebuilding and that their plan is going to involve losing for 2 or 3 years, and that they're going to lose for 2 or 3 years, and they're going to get good draft picks, and they're going to do this, and they haven't communicated it to the players, let alone the fans. And now the fans are turning on them, right? The fans aren't showing up to the games. And I think the Canadiens have done a spectacular job in this respect in communicating to the media and through the media what they're doing, right? And how it's progressing, right? How, every stage of it. They do the press conference at the golf tournament every year, and everybody looks, to that. They do the State of the Union after the trade deadline. It's the media consciousness of the Montreal Canadiens has gone through the roof in the last 2.5 years under Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes, right? It's been night and day the way they treat the media and the way they treat the fans. With the messaging, the messaging is clear and concise. It obviously backfires every once in a while on them, right? The messaging around in the mix was completely misinterpreted by the media, and people took it the wrong way, and it ended up being a bit of a debacle. I mean, as it turned out, it was okay because they are in the mix, and everything worked out. But again, clear and concise messaging to the media, more transparency, understanding the role that the media and the fans have to play, in this fan base and in this organization. And I think they've done a really good job with that. And just to the selling the rebuild plan to the fans, communicating the plan, being clear about it. Getting the fans involved, letting the fans be a part of it. It's not a secret, right? So Jeff Gordon, I would like to make the playoffs, and I think our team could. So this is actually a quote from the golf tournament. This is part of the misconstrued in the mix messaging, and this is what Jeff Gordon actually said at the golf tournament. I would like to make the playoffs and think our team could, but I've been through this before with a couple of other teams when you're rebuilding, and I think the players will tell you on the ice if they're ready. And setting the bar, the expectation, I'm not sure that's something that we need to do to tell the players you have to do this or it's a disappointment. Because we have so many young players that have to play and need to keep growing. I think I said last year, there's a lot of players on our team that still haven't hit their ceiling, and there's a lot of unknowns. So as we go into camp and head into the season, we're going to learn more and more and more about our team, and we'll know what kind of team we have. For me to sit here and say on the first day of camp, yeah, we're a great team, we'll see. Our players will tell us inside the room and inside our conversations, we feel really confident about our team and where we're going. Right? So that's the message. That's the message that Jeff Gordon wanted to send to the fan base and to the media at the outset of this season. Right? It wasn't about we have to be in the mix, or it's our goal to be in the mix, or our object. It's I'm not going to set a goal like that on these players, and it would be irresponsible for me to do that. That's his message, right? It would be, with a team this young, there's still a lot of growth to happen. There's a lot of developing to happen. And so, it's not about setting expectations. It's about listening to the players and communicating with them and understanding what they're capable of and where they can take the team, right? So that's kind of, the communication piece. Again, I think communication is one of the most important things when it comes to any team, and it's certainly very important in a rebuild. And again, it's more than just the communication with the players. It's the communication, with the fans, the media, and everybody else. So that's what I got on that aspect of the rebuild, guys. Today it's about communication. We've talked about a few other things around the rebuild. I don't know what you guys think about that, but let's get to some of the comments and see what you have to say. I think some of it's still going to get back to the Patrick Laine stuff. Yeah, again, there's lots of whipping boys, PLW. You're right. Love that message. We'll make waves and cascade down to the players. 100%. 100%. Intertap, respect to Hughes. We praise the culture being established on this team. Well, look no farther than the top. It all starts there. I agree, right? One of the things I really like about the way they're doing things is they're doing things very deliberately, right? These are things that they're doing with an intention, with a purpose. They're not just sort of playing things by ear and dealing with things as they come along. They're very conscious of where they are and where they're going. I've done a lot of work in the areas of work culture and employee engagement. What the Habs are doing is textbook. Communication and earning trust is so important. Yeah, it's textbook, right? It's not rocket science, and it's a battle between the old way, the traditional way, the old school, and like you say, textbook, modern, progressive approaches to workplace, environment, culture, whatever. And the hockey world is so much more concerned about maintaining old school ways, and they believe that they're weak or they're soft or whatever if they don't have a coach that breaks sticks and throws garbage cans and screams and yells and whatever, because that's the way it always was. And so hockey recycles these coaches who continue to come along, and they act that way and they behave that way. And again, it's like other players view it, or coaches and people in hockey think that that's the way it has to be, and that's the way it needs to be, and that it's not hockey if it's not that way. And it's just there's so many layers of cultural bullshit and traditional conservatism in hockey that I think the Canadiens are doing a really good job by being ahead of the curve here. And there's a couple other teams that I think are there as well. But I think you can really make hay in professional hockey in the NHL if you can be ahead of the curve on some of this stuff. MSL is very good with the media, gives a lot of time. One of the best coaches I've seen when time to speak to the media. Yeah, he is, but it's not just about him giving his time, PLW. It's about what he says as well, right? He's thoughtful, and his philosophies have value, and so it's not just that he speaks to the media. It's the way that he speaks to the media, and he's patient with them, and all of that stuff. We would be remiss if we don't also give credit to Molson as well. He started by wanting a winner and knew he had to put the right people in command with full transparency in order for it to work. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jeff Molson is the head of this ship. And if Jeff Molson decides that he wants the rebuild to end tomorrow, guess what? The rebuild ends tomorrow. If he hadn't decided that this team was going to go through all of this and hadn't had the wherewithal to do this, we wouldn't be talking about any of this, right? Now, I think, he's now that they have Gordon and Hughes and St. Louis and other people in the organization, I think that he's taking a lot from them as well. But it was his job to bring these people in, right? It's his decision to hire Gordon. It was Gordon's decision to hire Hughes. It was Hughes' decision to hire Marty St. Louis. So, I mean, Molson's the captain of the ship. Jeff Molson's the captain of the ship, and his ability to recognize that something needed to change, and again, his recognition of that it was important for this team to be more progressive and whatever is huge. Canadiens just scored a shorthanded goal. Sorry, the Rocket just scored a shorthanded goal. Laurent Dauphin, it looks like. A funny thing, I just see Hudson Bay advertising on the boards of the current Leafs hockey game. Aren't they in bankruptcy? I don't believe Hudson Bay Company is bankrupt. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, again, if you don't have the entire, Billy D says, is agreeing with Entertap. If you don't have the entire organization on board, then a rebuild doesn't work, right? We talked in a previous show about, Kent Hughes' quote about everybody pulling in the same direction. And that starts with Jeff Molson, right? If Jeff Molson's not on board, then it doesn't really matter, right? If Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon aren't pulling in the same direction and don't have the same, aren't reading from the same playbook, it doesn't work. So again, it's communication from top to bottom, from the guy that takes your ticket at the door to Jeff Molson to the Michael Pezzetta, the 13th forward, to it's everybody. Everybody's got to be on board with this, or it doesn't work. Right? That's all there is. All right, guys, so we're going to get to our last part of the show. Somebody was asking about Ivan Demidov early on. So we're going to get to the prognosis, guys, which is our prospects component of the show. If you're over on TikTok, guys, you can come on over to YT. The channel is right here. If you want to be part of the show, you can ask your questions here, but you can also ask your questions over on YT, and you can also see the graphics, and you'll get a better... it's a better experience if you come over here, guys. Hugo Langlois, Ro Jogan, K. Robin, Karen Hockey, Caden. Come on over, guys. Join us over here. All right, guys. So what I want to talk about when it comes to prospects, I'll keep this quick because we've been going for a while here. End of the season. We saw two of the Canadiens' top prospects be eliminated from their respective playoffs this year. So I want to talk about Michael Hage and Jacob Fowler. And I also want to talk about I don't even know what to call it, the news, the rumors, everything going on about Ivan Demidov lately. So let's talk about Michael Hage first. Michael Hage and the Michigan Wolverines were eliminated from the Big Ten playoffs last week. So their season is over. Michael Hage was named Rookie of the Year in that conference, in the Big Ten Conference. So that's good news. So Michael Hage's season is over. He is not going to be coming to the Montreal Canadiens this year. I shouldn't say that. That's not official. But I would be very surprised. I don't think that he's ready to come out. There's been no talk about him coming out, and I think the Canadiens recognize that he needs some more time in NCAA hockey, and I believe that he'll spend at least one more season, perhaps two, with the Michigan Wolverines, which is perfectly fine with me. I think that's a perfect plan for him. It's a good idea. I think he needs to put on some size. I think he needs a little bit more experience. He's very good, obviously. He struggled a little bit in the last, quarter of the season or so. But, Michael Hage, season over. However, he is not. I don't expect that we'll see him in Montreal anytime soon. Jacob Fowler, on the other hand, was also eliminated. His team, the Boston College Eagles, were eliminated from the Hockey East playoffs. However, their situation is a little bit different than Michigan. They have been the number one ranked team in the NCAA for the better part of the season, and they will almost certainly receive an at-large bid to compete in the Frozen Four, or the NCAA hockey tournament. They will almost certainly get a spot there. So his season actually is not over. he will continue. He'll get a couple weeks off here in order for Hockey East playoffs to finish up. But he will be playing again in the NCAA tournament, and we can all look forward to watching him there. When that's over, he may come out. I think there's a more of a possibility that Jacob Fowler's career in the NCAA is over, and we could see him sign a contract with the Montreal Canadiens once the NCAA tournament's over. Hopefully for him, with a victory, right? Winning an NCAA championship would obviously be great for him, but I think it would be good for Canadians and Canadiens fan in that it would probably incentivize him to make the next move and take the next step in his career. If he does come out, the Canadiens will likely treat him similarly to the way they treated Lane Hudson last year. I would expect that they'll sign him to a contract. They will most likely send him to Laval, and maybe he'll get a chance to play some games in Laval. And I would expect, again, depending on the circumstances, the Canadiens are in a playoff race right now. And so I guess it would depend on the circumstances. If they were in a situation where they had a game that they could afford to lose, or that, they were so far in a playoff spot that they didn't have to worry about anything, I think they would probably give him an opportunity to play a game at the NHL level. That would do a couple of things. One, it would sort of be a bit of an incentive for him to sign a contract in the sense that, everybody wants to play in the NHL. It would give him some experience. But what it would also do is it would burn a year of his entry-level contract. And again, that's sort of a cookie, a gift, a reward that some teams give their players as a sign of good faith. Basically, by playing one or two games, it allows them to get a year closer to their payday and their first contract, right? We're seeing Lane Hudson, who will be eligible to be extended this summer. And that's largely due to the fact that he played 2 games last year. When he was signed to his contract, he played the 2 games against the Detroit Red Wings at the end of the season. If they hadn't done that, he would have another year on his ELC, and the Canadiens would have another year of him at the entry-level price. But again, it's a sign of good faith by the Canadiens. It's a sign that they believe in the player, and it sends a message to the player that, we believe in you, we want you to be a part of the organization, and we're willing to pay you. We're willing to, we're willing to pay for it. So they may do that with Jacob Fowler as well. And that brings us to the prospect that perhaps is the prospect that people are most excited about. And there's been some news about him of late, and that's Ivan Demidov. And so, again, the news about Ivan Demidov is kind of all over the place lately. I guess we'll start by saying that he has kind of struggled of late. His last 10 games or so in the KHL have not gone very well. For him, he hasn't been producing at the same rate that he had previously in the year. He's being shuffled all around the lineup by his coach, Roman Rottenberg. He doesn't play back-to-back games with the same line mates at all. He's being moved up and down the lineup. He's played the last few games on the 3rd and 4th line. There have been games where he's even been the team's 13th forward. There's been no consistency to the situation that he's been put on. And, he's not been put in a situation to succeed. In fact, it appears almost as if the team is, the coach is intentionally putting him in situations for him not to succeed. I'm not sure what that's all about. I've speculated in the past about 2 things. One, perhaps it's their way of pressuring him into signing a contract extension so that he remains in Russia and doesn't leave for the Montreal Canadiens. Perhaps it's a way for them to put pressure on the Montreal Canadiens to write a check and to buy him out, to buy his contract out in order to bring him over to North America. I'm not sure which it is. We've seen some strange comments recently from Roman Rottenberg. About a month ago, he commented about the fact that Ivan Demidov he won't be leaving Russia until they win the Gagarin Cup, which is the championship trophy in the KHL. I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that, or if it was perhaps lost in translation in a certain way. And then most recently, we've received news that Demidov will be scratched, healthy scratched for tomorrow's game. That he'll be healthy scratched for the game after that, which is the final game of the regular season, and that they plan to healthy scratch him for the playoffs, and that they don't intend to play him in the playoffs. Now, just in case you think that there's anything other than chicanery going on here, Ivan Demidov is their top scorer. It's not just delusional Montreal Canadiens fans with delusional views and expectations and opinions about Ivan Demidov that aren't, this is a kid who in basically half the ice time has led the team in offensive production. He is their best player, period. There's no disputing that. There's no doubting that. He is probably the best player in the KHL. Certainly the best offensive player in the KHL. And if he had, the right ice time, the right coaching, the right circumstances, there's no doubt that his production would reflect that. So again, there's no messaging this. There's no spinning it. There's something funny going on here. I guess we may never know what it is. I've said before that I really hope that Ivan Demidov comes to North America, comes to Canada, comes to Montreal, and takes to Canada, takes to the environment, plays in the NHL for 15 or 20 years, and at some point becomes a big name and a famous person and retires and writes a book so that we can find out exactly what went on this year in St. Petersburg, from his perspective, because there's so much going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, and it would be really nice someday to be able to find out exactly what's going on. So right now we're kind of up in the air. There's speculation that, him being healthy scratched is a precursor to him coming over to Canada, that the Canadiens are going to somehow buy out his contract and that he'll somehow be able to come over here before the end of the season. I don't know about that. But again, my biggest issue with that would have been, I don't really like the idea of him abandoning his team. Or being able to abandon his team in that way, at this stage of the season, right? He's played with this team all year long. I'm not sure I'm keen on having a guy who can so easily walk away from a team as they approach the playoffs. But now we're talking about, he's not even going to get to play, that he's going to be in the press box for the entirety of the playoffs. I don't know that he's really abandoning anything anymore. So, that concern is kind of gone for me now. So yeah, the other speculation is that somehow this is a power move by SKA, and that they're going to somehow, try to coerce him into, signing another contract and not leaving. Again, I don't know. Like it's Russia, man. Crazy shit happens in Russia, and so, who knows? Who knows what's going on? I think we're probably going to, hear and see some things in the next few days about this situation. If he's coming sooner rather than later, then I think that's exciting. But again, I don't have any details. I don't have any knowledge. It's all sort of rumor and speculation. I think there were some comments made by Elliot Friedman in his podcast recently where he talked about the Canadiens being excited about bringing him over here. Now, I'm not sure what exactly that meant. Maybe he'll clarify that in the next episode, but, it wasn't clear whether he was talking about bringing him over before the end of the season or whether it was about, them bringing him over, when his contract ends in May. So, yeah. So, I mean, if they do wait for his contract, if they don't buy him out, his contract doesn't end just because the SKA season ends. His contract ends at the end of May, I believe. And he wouldn't be contractually able to sign anything with the Canadiens until that contract expired. So Yeah. The other thing to keep in mind too is that even if he did come over earlier and the Canadiens made the playoffs, he wouldn't be eligible to play for the Canadiens in the playoffs, right? He was not under contract at the trade deadline, and therefore would not be eligible to play for Montreal in the playoffs. I believe he would be eligible to play for Laval in the playoffs, but I'm not absolutely certain about that. I'll have to do more research to find out about that. Thank you for the likes, Matt K. I appreciate it. If you want to come and check us over on YT, this is the channel here. If you have questions on TikTok, feel free to post them over there, or you can come on over here and join us here. I think we're all pretty hyped up about Demidov Nicolas. I think it will be interesting to see him come over. I think maybe they're a bit upset that he won't resign. Yeah, I think that's part of it, Anonymous. Again, like I said, I think this might be them trying to pressure him into resigning, or alternatively, punishing him for not re-signing, right? And again, that's not something we would expect to see here in North America, but it's not something that, I would put past, Roman Rottenberg. We've seen in the past, right, where he's turned down contract offers and it's resulted in a decrease in his ice time. So that's it on the prognosis side of things, guys. That's pretty much the show for tonight. We did our weekly checkup. We did the current symptoms. We did the treatment. And we did the prognosis. We talked about the Canadiens in the playoffs. We talked about Patrick Laine. We talked about the rebuild and the importance of communication in a rebuild. And finally, we talked about 3 of the Canadiens' top prospects and what we can expect from them in the next month or two. And it should be interesting to see how that goes. So I think that's going to be pretty much it for the show for tonight, guys. The Laval Rocket lead 2-0 over the Toronto Marlies. I didn't see who scored that last goal. I did see that the assists went to Farrell and Mailloux, but I didn't see who the goal was by. Mailloux is limping off the ice right now, which is not a good sign. But this has been a very, very chippy and dirty game. Mailloux is putting no weight on his right foot right now. I hope that's a skate problem and not a foot problem. But he is going to the dressing room. Not a good sign. But it's been a really chippy, dirty game. If you're interested to check it out, it should be there should be some fireworks here in the third period, I would expect. So that's it for tonight, guys. Listen, I appreciate everybody for coming. I appreciate you for watching over here on TikTok. I appreciate you guys for watching over here on YouTube. Again, it's been a great show. I really enjoyed it. I hope that you did as well. Again, I would certainly invite you guys to participate a little bit more. Feel free to post your comments. Again, I don't want this to be so much a show about me talking at you guys as much as it is talking with you guys. But it was fun nonetheless. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. J'espère que vous avez aimé l'émission. Moi, j'ai beaucoup aimé l'émission, mais je voudrais beaucoup avoir plus de participation parce que moi, je ne veux pas vous parler à vous, mais je veux parler avec vous. Si vous avez des questions en français, j'aimerais bien aussi ça. On avait les questions aujourd'hui avec Nicolas en français, mais on veut sûrement vous donner une émission bilingue avec le contenu anglais et français. We really want to be able to give you guys a bilingual show with content in both English and French. So yeah, we're excited to have all of you here, and we really appreciate it. If you're watching the show, if you're here live, or if you're in a replay watching it, hit the subscribe button down below. We're around 310 subscribers now. We really want to get to 500. That's our next goal, and we definitely we need your help to do that. I continually ask you guys to subscribe. I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record, but we really do want to be able to get there. And I think it's better for everybody. Once we get to 500 subscribers, there's so much more we can do here on YouTube. And yeah, that would be great. So I appreciate all of you. Nicolas, Billy, Anonymous, PLW, RDP was here. Entertap was in and out. I'm sure he's over with Coach Frenchie as well. Spectre Dad, Mark Boisclair, Rodney. Jeevan was here quickly. What's up, Jeevan? Boom Boom Rex, Diesel, all you guys. I appreciate all of you. Thanks so much. We will see you next Wednesday. for another episode of HABS Therapy Day, and we, of course, will see you tomorrow evening. Hopefully, I have some other things going on, but I'm hoping to be able to do a show for you guys tomorrow evening after the Canadiens meet up with the New York Islanders. So that's it for tonight, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a great one, and why is that not working? We will see you in the next one. Peace out.
Pour un gars d'ici, être le directeur de général des Canadiens est une occasion d'une vie.
Enjoy the moment, you're in the NHL here.
Working for the Montreal Canadiens is a dream. La plus grande franchise dans la histoire du hockey.
If it was my last day on this planet, and you told me what would you like to do, we want to be in that building on a Saturday night.